All right, welcome to the Dawg and Gus show.
Hey, Doug.
Hey, Gus, how are you?
Good, you?
Good, thanks.
What are we talking about today?
Well, we're not talking about something. We're talking to somebody today. Very excited about this. Our very first guest.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're super lucky to have a special guest, and it's Mark Leo of Mecca of Stank. Thanks for coming, Mark.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
It's awesome. Basically, we're going to go through a few questions with you. We had a conversation before you got here, Dog, and you're going to love what we get to. But
Oh, is that right?
oh, yeah.
Nice.
So tell us, Mark, what was the role of music in your early years of your life?
Well, I started playing guitar as a young teen, so my dad had this old guitar. I grew up in Moncton, so I'm a Maritimer.
Nice.
And, everyone has a guitar around the house,
Yeah.
And
Kitchen parties.
I taught myself how to play guitar, and, I probably surpassed my dad's skills in the first year, because he wasn't proficient. He was just, had a few chords and a few chord books. And so eventually I bought my own guitar, and so I started playing with, probably around maybe in high school. I started playing with other people and some form of a band in a basement. And
Nice.
And so I would say, for a good part, I was just a guitar player for a long time. And my singing, I wasn't as proficient as singing. And I would say for a good probably couple of decades after that, my guitar playing, never exceeded past playing rhythm on acoustic. And then I would say maybe the last 7 years, I started changing the way I played guitar, and I stopped using a pick, and I started playing more percussively and more rhythmically, and so it kind of changed, and I started learning kind of more jazzy chords,
Nice,
like major seventh type chords, so all of a sudden I could play the things I wanted to play, right? So
Cool.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, we can tell basically on
They're the great tracks.
Yeah,
I love them.
Yeah, we've enjoyed. We got the sneak look at or listened to 2 extra songs. But yeah, the Dopamine track is phenomenal.
thank you very much.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're loving that one for sure.
yeah. So if you were to say who was your inspiration, obviously your dad was somewhat of an inspiration, but who inspired you to be part of the music industry?
I don't know if I've been inspired personally by an artist other than, being a music lover.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, once I got to a point where I just couldn't stop playing and wanting to learn, it became kind of a passion. And I, connected with people that shared the same passion and the same kind of, we'd be in the zone when we were playing and really kind of just have this organic kind of living creature that we're all feeding into. And then it became, okay, this is what I want to do. I'm still part-time, I'm not a full-time musician.
Right.
It's coming though.
But it's, it's taken a lot more time than it has. And, it's just kind of escalating as the months go by.
Nice.
Great.
All right. What you got next there, brother? You want me to do one?
You should do one.
I should. Yeah, just like you're saying, like meeting up with other people, like of same mind. Is that tell us the story of how you guys met? There's 4 of you, right? There's the 4.
Yeah,
of you?
there's 4 of us. So I started going to open mics quite a bit, maybe 7 years ago. And there's probably a good 10-year gap where I wasn't playing in bands. I moved from the U.S. After about an 8-year stint in the U.S. And while I was in the U.S., I was played in a tribute band, an 80s tribute band.
Ah, I love it.
Oh, you won't.
No, I won't.
No, you're not going to love it forever.
Oh, shit.
And so I moved here, I think back to the U.S. or back to Canada in 2000, and then started kind of a female-fronted rock kind of cover band. We're called Thunder Kitty, and we were around for a couple of years. And the lead singer was a previous relationship of mine. So once the relationship broke up, the band broke up. So I went probably a good, I want to say 8-year gap without playing any music.
Okay.
So I started going open mics, playing solo stuff and learning a lot of these songs that I play now in solo acoustic format. So that was always kind of a skill: is how do I take this R&B song or this hip hop song or Marvin Gaye and just bring it down to the basics on an acoustic.
Right.
And so I started doing that for quite a few years, and then they started booking me for gigs at some of these open mics, and then that's where I met the drummer. So Jansen Richard is the drummer in Mecca of Stank, and he's pretty accomplished. He did a European tour with J.W. Jones at one point.
Yep. Okay. Yep. I know him.
Several musicians went through J.W. Jones kind of touring circuit, and so I met Jansen at an open mic. He had his drum kit set up, and he was playing with a few people going up. And so when it was my turn to go up, I said, "Hey man, do you mind sitting in?" He's like, "Sure." He's like, "What do you want to play?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm kind of have a toss up between what do you think about D'Angelo or Curtis Mayfield?"
Unreal.
That's a toss up.
And he looked at me with these eyes as if I was joking. He's like, "No one's ever asked me that before." He was expecting Tom Petty, Tragically Hip,
Right?
Of
course.
kind of a typical bar tunes, right? So, so he had a love of that kind of music as well. And so right away he was like, "Wow, okay." So we started kind of playing together. Jansen, I should say, the guitarist Trevor came along when I was actually playing in a kind of a country. I guess we're still kind of playing. We haven't played a gig in a couple of years, but we played. I don't know if you ever heard of Doc Yates. He's a country artist.
Yes.
So I was playing bass with Doc Yates, and we brought Trevor in for basically a gig because before COVID happened, we played the Havelock Country Jamboree.
Yes. Yeah, I know of Havelock for sure. Yeah.
So we had a really great slot on a Saturday right after the headliner. So
Really?
full massive crowd.
Nice.
We had
That's
Trevor.
awesome.
Trevor's insane on any string instrument. Mandolin, banjo, and finger picking and so. But it's funny. I just never really got to experience the range of his talents until I brought him in to sit in with Mecca of Stank once. The initial version of Mecca of Stank, we played a couple of gigs with me on guitar, acoustic guitar, a friend playing bass, Jansen, and a keyboard player, and then the idea was I'd have these guest musicians, and it would always be this kind of improv thing, and someone different every time.
Right.
So I brought Trevor out and said, "Hey, do you want to come in and sit in with Stank one night?" This is probably our second or third gig. He said, "Sure." So he came out, and right away, so I started playing bass, because I figured if we have a guitar player, I'll play bass and sing. And all of a sudden, everything changed. I'm like, okay, there's no more guests. This is the band.
Right.
Nice.
It was
That's
just awesome.
Yeah, his rhythmic patterns, it just totally blew my mind.
Kind of solidified the band a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Love that.
And then Omar Weinlight came on board. I would say sometime during COVID. Our original keyboard player moved out east to go to school. So Omar, we had a gig at Live on Elgin in 2020 during one of the windows between lockdowns, and Omar was recommended by some people in the music community in Ottawa, and so he came in and brought his talents and really has a strong backing. He was in a kind of a Latin jazz band in Mexico City for a long time.
Wow.
Before he moved to Canada, maybe a decade ago. So he brings those kind of chops, and now he's just insane as well. And so between Trevor and Jansen and Omar, it's a bit of a super group of musicians. I think I play bass and sing, but I feel that those guys just really carry the band, most of the time.
That's great. Yeah, and going on that, like, what's the name? Like the name Mecca of Stank, like it's very, very interesting. That's for sure. But
Yes.
Where did that come from? Like, where did that come up?
So it's a bit of an inside kind of
Usually is
with so Stank is with musicians will say, if you're in the zone and you're playing and you get that face, it's called the stank face. So you see people, if I can describe it, it's kind of like the same kind of look someone would have if they're constipated. So it's
so basically it's what I look like when I'm talking on the mic in the
Exactly,
podcast, right?
exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
so this torturous kind of painful yet beautiful yet you're struggling, but it's really just what it is. This musical euphoria, right? So you're having this ecstatic experience and euphoric experience, and it's called you get that stank face.
Right. Okay.
So that's where between the four of us, that's what we thrive is to we get in the zone pretty much every time we play, and we all have our stank faces, and that becomes the part of the show. We're just watching us react to the music.
Nice.
Making it a Mecca.
Exactly.
I love it.
I love it. I think Joe Cocker was part of your band at one time.
Yeah.
He's got a severe stank.
Yeah.
face. Oh yeah.
Yeah. He definitely does.
Yeah.
I think you know what? It makes a lot of sense, Mark.
It does. It does now.
Because like thankfully you're a pure musician, whereas we're kind of two guys that talk about music, and it's nice to hear where you see that face now. Like I see it in my head right now when I'm looking at different artists that they're making that euphoric face, and it's a stank face.
Yeah, and I think it's really comes out of out of a performance, right? So it becomes really just reactive to music, and you become almost, at least for me, I become oblivious to the audience at that point. I'm like, this is and half the time I'm turned around with my back to the audience, and I'm in with the band, So we're all just in this little kind of womb of euphoria, if I can use that word.
Nice. Yeah.
I like it. I'm down with it.
Yep, for sure.
So it's very natural, and it's not something that that I strive to look. How do I look when I'm playing? It's really just it probably doesn't look good half the time, but it feels good.
It doesn't matter what you look like, man. You're playing music.
Yeah, yeah, seriously. But he's the bass player, though.
And the singer.
Yeah, well, that's true. So you got a juxtaposition between the two, right? Because the bass player gets nothing. As I understand it, in the music industry, the bass player is just...
Yeah, but
when you're the bass player,
what
singer,
about Rush? Like, Geddy Lee. Do you like Geddy Lee?
As a bass player?
I appreciate the complexity of the Rush
Oh,
music.
yes,
but
he's on my side.
I think his voice really never gave it never did anything for me.
There it is.
Yeah, I'm seeing him staring at me right now.
I'm looking right at him.
He's staring right at me.
Well, I'm sure you've heard it before. We've talked about Rush a few times.
So if you would have replaced, let's say, Geddy Lee with, let's say, Robert Plant or something, or someone that
this is my guy.
Then it became okay. He needs that lower end.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. But
yeah,
I still do like.
But I know it's probably sacrilegious. It's probably sacrilegious.
Well, it's not. I don't think it is.
You're allowed to. It's a free
Everybody's got
country,
an
right? You're
opinion.
allowed to have your opinion on everything except for James.
Well, everybody has an opinion on
Yeah,
me.
for sure.
What do you think, Dawg?
Well, I'd like to go back and see what his first memory of a concert was for sure.
There you go.
Do you remember?
Wow,
'Cause
I do remember.
Oh, good.
So it's gonna date me. It's gonna date my age a little. So I was probably, I want to say maybe 12 or 13, and a friend of mine, his dad chaperoned us to this concert.
Right.
It was at the Moncton Coliseum, and I want to say probably, I don't know, maybe 84, 85, 95, maybe 86, I don't know, somewhere around there. I was young, and
Right.
it was Helix and the Headpins.
Nice. Back with Darby Mills. I love it.
And I was a big Helix fan, for it wasn't metal, and it wasn't too soft. It was just right in the middle there.
Yep, absolutely was. Yeah.
Of pretty good songwriting too, and
Yeah.
so I went through a Helix phase as in my young teens.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like it.
That's a good one. I
And
like that.
Headpins, you hear Headpins now. This still holds up. That don't it make you feel like dancing?
Yep.
There you go.
Join in, buddy.
No.
Oh no. No.
Listen, I'll sing with you.
Yeah.
However, when I have a proper singer with me, I'm not gonna.
Yeah. You don't.
I don't
Yeah,
wanna
yeah.
mess
All,
with
of,
him.
all of a sudden, you're shy.
Oh, I'm not shy. I'm just,
It's the headbands are still around.
Like
eh?
dancing.
See, you're singing.
I know. I'm not shy at all.
Yeah, but Darby's not in the band anymore. She's doing her own thing, the Darby
that
Mills.
right?
Yeah, she's doing her own thing called the Darby Mills Project.
Interesting.
And they've got a new female lead singer.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I did see them play. Was it Kentville
Yeah,
Festival? Okay.
Kentville
Full Fair, probably.
Yeah, the Kentville.
That's
they got
awesome.
some amazing acts out at that festival.
So you'll find, Mark, that Dawg has it's amazing. That head is full of random facts. About
random musical facts.
I'm the same way.
Yeah.
But not just music, everything, movies.
Yeah, well, that too, right? But music is just kind of
Yeah.
right there.
But it's
Same
cool that he'll say something like that, and then he'll have something to give back to it, which I do like. So obviously that is there like a hidden meaning to your music?
It's not hidden at all. It's pretty overt,
Yeah.
So they all have different themes. They're all. My writing tends to be a little more cynical, in terms of where we are, where we're going, as a civilization.
Yes.
And when I try and write songs that are just kind of like, here's a breakup, here's a love lost, or it's kind of generic kind of themes. It really ends up not sounding great. I can't. I need to write something that I really feel strong about.
Absolutely.
And so, all of a sudden, I realized that once we started putting original music out, that I have this kind of platform now to say things that. I deleted my Facebook, my personal Facebook, probably maybe a year or two before COVID.
Right.
And I used to have a lot of fun, and I used to post Friday haikus every Friday.
Okay.
And they'd always have some kind of social commentary,
Right.
but in a funny way. And so that was my venue for a long time. Is my haikus. That was my platform.
Nice.
And now that I'm just on Instagram and just really kind of toned down some of the social media. That now that I have this kind of venue or platform, I should say, to say things that I think they're important.
Yep.
For Dopamine Dreams, it started really with kind of questioning, the monetization of anger in social media feeds, and how AI, is tweaking the dial to more outrage, because that's what gets more clicks, right?
Yes,
For sure.
absolutely does. Yeah.
Yeah.
And to the point where I think people have a hard time discerning what's real, what's news, what's information,
Absolutely.
what's knowledge.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a challenge in itself, and I like that you have your own platform to kind of
For sure.
give your take on it, right?
Now that kind of feeds into a question that I had written down before when I was listening to the stuff. How do you discern, like, okay, Dopamine Dream, this is the kind of genre we want to go to. The other songs, like, classic reggae, because the beginning of the second song you're going to be releasing in June, definitely reggae, right? How do you decide, like, because you've got so many different genres in your your bucket or whatever.
I'm
you
kind
want
of
to call
all over the place, but I think for Dopamine, it started out as really, I wrote a couple of rap hooks, and then so I built a song around these kind of rap hooks.
Okay.
That, I had this line that I really liked that. You can't convince me that the earth is flat when my vision of this is your vision of that.
Yeah.
And it kind of reminded me of a kind of almost like a Beastie Boys style of rhyme.
For sure. That's what I got, by the way. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was thinking back a little bit further.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe
like
even
Grandmaster Flash.
Grandmaster Flash.
Yeah, Furious 5, yeah.
And those kind of rap hooks, I feel they're almost little drum fills, It's like and it's like so I wrote this song around the instrumentation. We all kind of came together and wrote it around that.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't start off with a genre at all.
Okay, well, that's cool.
And we started out calling ourselves a funk band, and then so now we've kind of we're all over the place, like Latin and jazz and so
I definitely see the jazz influence. I hear the jazz influence in the songs that I've listened to for sure. Well, going on that, like even the song that we listened to, thankfully, thank you for sending those.
That was awesome.
State in Your Mind, which is releasing on June 3rd, but I found that like a super funky vibe, like a reggae vibe, right?
So that when I started out, I wanted to write that reggae vibe. I'm really into like some of the roots reggae, some Bob Marley, and not so much reggae tone or kind of the soca type stuff, but really just the roots, stripped down, kind of slowed, kind of that chink, that kind of vibe.
Yeah.
And but then in my mind, I was like, I want to make this a Latin fusion song. I don't want to make it just straight roots reggae. So how do I make it? With maybe some Latin kind of undertones in there, and that's when I kind of had these little Latin melodies in there that and Omar kind of really embellished, and it ends up being kind of a complete kind of a salsa double time breakdown.
Such a vibe, man. It's a really good tune.
I like it. Starts out and it's just I love it.
I love that the fact that the four of you bring something different to the band, right? As a good band does. So. I love that.
Yeah, and the way I bring these songs to the band, it's really just some lyrics and kind of a hook and kind of a core melody. But those guys, I don't write parts for them, right? They all come, bring in put their 2 cents in, and that's when it becomes a whole other kind of beast, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Even in the process, you're getting into your euphoria when you're even writing together, or just like, hey, well, how about this? Well, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Like, let's go with that.
Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of like your creative process, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So if you could have a musician tag along with you on tour for 1 month, who would it be and why?
Wow.
Thought I'd throw you off.
So I just played we just had our launch party at Queen Street Fair on May 6th, and so we had one of the local musicians in Ottawa sit in for that one. We had 2 of them actually, but one of them is Ed Lister. He's one of the premier trumpet players in Ottawa. So if there's a band in Ottawa with a horn section, Ed's in the band, and he probably runs the band. Commotions. Well, actually, Commotions isn't his band, but Prime Rig, big band, the Hornets, Sly High, all these bands. Yeah. And so I would love to have. He's probably one of the most proficient, and it was really cool having a trumpet player as well because we haven't had that. And I played with some sax players to sit in sometimes. But if I could pick one musician that really just kind of defined the vibe, I would probably have to pick maybe D'Angelo. If we could bring back the 90s.
It's by the way, if you guys have the chance, download this playlist that they have. The Mecca of Stank playlist. It's unreal, and D'Angelo's on it a few times.
Yeah, and
that album that I had on CD, by the way.
This is the whole thing.
Was kind of when you ever had a date or something over, that was the album you'd put on for sure.
For sure.
And then D'Angelo would be cruising around with his shirt off, and you'd feel like an idiot.
Yeah, then you'd feel very insecure about yourself and stuff. Yeah, like that's on Spotify, guys, and I've been playing it for the last 4 days. It's so good.
Same, like it's been my go-to all week since Mark agreed to do the podcast.
But we do have a question though, Mark, and I have one, and you have one. Where's the Bob Marley? There's no Bob Marley on this playlist.
That's true.
No Prince either.
Yeah, that's true. You know what? That's 2 very good call-outs. And I think what happened was I wanted to cap it at 100, and then once I got to 100, I go, I'm gonna have to start deleting things. As they have less. There's a few songs in there, especially some of the newer lo-fi jazz type stuff. little more unknown, but I just like the vibe.
So good.
I did that too, like with 007.
Oh, 07.
I was like, why does that sound so familiar? I have one of their CDs.
Okay.
I'm like, wow.
Amazing.
Like I just picked it up randomly when I was picking up some jazz stuff, right? I was like, it's
07
so good.
changed my life. I mean, that was, I'm going to ask you guys this question after, but if you ask me which kind of album or, what artist, had the most impact on me in terms of bringing me down a different direction would have been 07.
Nice.
And I want to say I first heard it on the Garden State soundtrack. I don't know if you've ever talked about that soundtrack in your other podcasts.
Somebody actually posted it on our, we were talking about soundtracks, and somebody posted Garden State.
So Garden State soundtrack, Zach Braff was the director, and he handpicked it, and actually won a Grammy, I think. Yeah. And so that album took me on different musical paths. 07, Thievery Corporation was on there.
I love that stuff.
Nick Drake,
so good.
Nick Drake,
the Thievery Corporation.
Yeah.
Nick Drake.
Coldplay was on there, and the Shins.
The Shins. Yeah.
The Shins. Yeah.
So these bands, I hadn't heard of most of them. I may have heard 07 maybe within that year before.
Right.
But,
okay.
But that album just really kind of changed me in terms of introducing me in this whole. I should say 07 specifically introduced me to this whole kind of genre called downtempo, which I didn't know existed.
Yep.
And before that, I was calling it maybe acid jazz or maybe ambient. But downtempo is really, I think, that all those Rhodes piano kind of jazzy solos and
I didn't there's so many different definitions for jazz. Like you have a page and a half long of different styles of jazz.
I think there's traditional jazz, and then there's
like you said, ambient. There's you can go on forever.
That's right. Yeah. Have you ever dealt with any performance anxiety? I mean, obviously, meeting you and we had a great conversation before this, but has that ever come up?
Not really. So, once I start performing, I pretty much get in the zone pretty quick. But I remember we played Havelock a couple years ago. So it wasn't Mecca of Stank, obviously, but there's twin stages. So you're setting up while the in this case it was the headliner that was on the next stage over, playing their set, and so you're on this kind of darkened other stage right next to it, and we had a lot of time, maybe 45 minutes to an hour of waiting, for them to switch over, for us to start. And I probably tuned my bass, I don't know, maybe 6-7 times, in that hour, just like, what do we do, and just like you're sitting there and you can see this massive crowd in front of you and all lit up. And so you get kind of anxious, because it's, and that was kind of a big gig for us too, and, so much anticipation, for this. I don't know how many rehearsals we had for this one gig, whereas in Mecca of Stank, we never rehearsed, right? So everything was pretty much on the fly.
Off the cuff, yeah.
Yeah. And so, which is kind of the way it works for that band, right? So,
right.
But yeah, I would say, the anticipation of, the day up, leading up to this big gig, can get kind of intense and a little kind of anxious and kind of fidgety. But once I start playing, I find it pretty quick.
Nice,
awesome.
Yeah, you could probably get inside your head. Oh man, we're following these guys, really? Like I always had that question as a musician. Like when you see the, I'm going off script, James. I'm sorry.
So go ahead, please.
But when you see the Kennedy Center Awards, and like we'll go with Led Zeppelin. The three remaining members of Led Zeppelin are sitting and you're playing guitar on one of their songs, and you're like, oh my God, I got to go and play for Robert Plant and Jimmy Page and John Paul.
And that was Hart, right, that did it?
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, no, but there was Lenny Kravitz did a tune.
Yeah.
There was a bunch of people, but Hart did Stairway to Heaven, which is,
And they had the double choir.
That was so awesome.
And Robert Plant was crying.
Yeah. And it's like, so what in being a musician, is that the ultimate, like the Mecca, like to say, okay, you know what, Mark, we want you to play for this gentleman. You know what I mean?
And maybe I think about it differently, but if it was me playing, Zeppelin in front of Robert Plant or, in front of Jimmy Page, I would probably take and make it a little bit my own.
Right.
And I think they'd appreciate that.
I think they would very much so.
They've heard their own version. And, I'd rather than try and duplicate something note for note, I think they want to see new life, new inspiration in it.
Absolutely do. Yeah.
Yeah,
I know Robert Plant does.
I think that even when we did the covers show that we did, part of it was making the song your own, but having the integrity of the actual song.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I wouldn't change the key,
You're not going to mess with it too much.
It's not going to go minor when it's major, nothing like that. But it really just kind of, make it your, give part of you and make it part of the song.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
And now a word from our sponsor.
We are currently recording Dawg and Gus in the podcast booth at Staples Studio, Ottawa, on 403 Bank Street, where they have everything to help your business work, learn, and grow. They are currently offering a clean and safe place to work with desks, offices, and drop-in memberships. More than a co-working space, Studio is a community to help you work, learn, and grow. For more information on pricing, please visit studio.stables.ca or contact the community manager at studio.ottawa@staples.ca for a tour.
Thanks, Gus. All right, so we're back for more questions from Mark, or for Mark, sorry.
Well, he could ask us one.
Yeah,
sure he can.
Sure.
Yeah, if he wants to.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so now I'll tell you mine after. I can tell you mine first, just to maybe get your juices flowing. But
Alrighty.
I want you to tell me to pick 3 artists or albums that really kind of had an impact on your life, and not necessarily because they're the best artist or because it's the best song, but because you associate with a memory, or it kind of changed directions and somehow in terms of your taste musically. And so I'll start. So
Sure.
Sometime in the I want to say early '90s, I heard for the first time. It's funny how I remember this. It was at the end during the credits of Entertainment Tonight. I think maybe John Tesh was on there at the time.
Oh my God, that's random.
John Tesh is one of your guys?
No,
Nice.
Surprise. No.
Surprise.
No, so I think there was the 25th or 30th anniversary of Gets Gilberto, with Girl from Ipanema, that.
Yes, I know the song. Yeah.
And the first time I heard just a clip of the song, I was like, "What is that song?" And I looked frantically. It may have been pre-internet. I'm not sure but I remember how I tracked it down. But I finally found the song after, I'm sure these days I could just ask Alexa.
And have it in a second. Yeah.
But I don't. But at that time, somehow I found it weeks later, and I bought the CD, and it changed my whole kind of direction of music in terms of hearing this bossa nova and
Yes.
this kind of Brazilian jazz and that whole kind of genre. Just kind of. I think I brought me. I did buy the disco version of Girl from Ipanema. That was probably a regret.
Yeah, you don't want to go there.
But there were a few versions that were.
There's
Absolutely, but yeah, the disco version maybe.
There's
I don't know.
There's a lot of good versions of that tune.
Yeah.
And so that's Gets Gilberto for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then I want to say D'Angelo. When Brown Sugar album came out, that was my introduction into D'Angelo in terms
So good.
of And I still we still play in Mecca of Stank. We play some of those tunes, like
Nice.
Brown Sugar and.
What's the one where he's in the video and he's naked and he's just like
It's
circling around?
Untitled.
Yeah, I like that too.
So I used to play that quite a bit, actually. Yeah. And how does it feel? And the third one I want to say is 07. I already kind of talked about it.
Yeah.
So I think it was called Simple Things, the album.
That's the one I have.
Yeah.
Wow.
With In the
Seriously.
Waiting Line. And,
Yep. Yeah.
And I probably learned at least 4 or 5 different 07 songs over the years and perform a lot of them. And so
Nice.
even though they're female singers, most of the stuff I should say half the stuff I sing are female singers, but just do my own way.
Absolutely.
Aretha Franklin, with my voice, or it's just I find a way to make it work.
Nice. Do it the Stank way. Are you going to go?
You
want
go
me to
first. You go
Of
first.
course, you want me to go first. Oh, 3 albums. Boy, that's
Or songs.
Okay, I'm going to go with albums.
He's an album guy.
Growing up, my dad used to listen to like the old country, right? So I'm going to have to go with Johnny Cash, live at San Quentin. Great album. I listened to it a lot. I
Cocaine
heard it a lot.
Blues, one of my favorite songs of all time.
Yeah, I heard it a lot growing up and stuff, so it kind of just influenced like what I would listen to until I was a teenager. And then when I got to high school, everybody was listening to the old heavy metal, like like all the heavier stuff. And I went kind of like the 80s, like with Jaluka from like Johnny Clegg and Savuka from South Africa.
Interesting.
Love
Wow.
them. They're so awesome. What?
I love it. It's
Huh.
it's just so obscure. I love it.
Yeah.
That's
And
great.
then, that kind of put me on the path, but I kind of went, and then, I don't know, lately, I go back to the country again. I'm really a big fan of the lyrics
No April
and
Wine,
stuff.
really? No April Wine?
Oh, yeah, I could throw that in, but I won't because you're expecting it.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Gary Allan. He's an amazing singer-songwriter that's come out since about like the late 90s. And his stuff, because there's a couple of songs that just speak to me. It's just like Life Ain't Always Beautiful is a great, great song. Bourbon Borderline is an amazing song. You got to listen to it. It's such a good song.
Yeah.
So that's what kind of catches me. And his voice, it just sounds like he gargled some gravel and drank some Jack, and then he just starts singing, right? And it's so awesome. So those are my 3 picks.
That's good. I like those. I'll obviously go to the 90s because that's sort of where I got, into music mostly after I turned about 12 or 13. An album called The Chronic came out. And I just remember hearing 1, 2, 3 into the 4, and I just became a man that moment. I don't know. It caught me, and it really did.
Obviously, the mic's all back on up because I'm about to rip shit up.
That's right. That's my man right there.
There
So Mark and I were talking, and we both love hip hop. So
I see that,
especially 90s hip hop.
Uh-huh.
And then I love the album by Daft Punk called Homework. I find that is like a super funky electronic. It's just like the best album maybe all time in that genre.
Nice.
Mark can go on that a bit, but I'm sure. And then I have to say, it's weird, but Elvis, because of my mom.
Oh yeah,
she would play Elvis all the time, and I just kind of loved his. I don't know, his voice was just it spoke to me, man.
You're not going to get any argument from me on that.
I know you love Elvis.
Yeah. I've got a memory of Elvis. I'm not that old, but I remember one of my oldest memories. I was getting my hair cut at the barber's. And my mom always cut my hair, but for some reason, I think she may have been ill or in the hospital for something. Nothing serious, But my dad had to take me to the barber, and I was crying and I was scared. That's probably why I remember it, So
probably,
I was scared of the clippers. I must have been maybe 6, 5, I don't know. And on the radio, that's when they announced that Elvis had died.
Oh,
and the bartender, the
barber,
stopped. He stopped cutting my hair all of a sudden, and everyone was in shock. And I didn't know who Elvis was, but I remember it being a city.
Yeah, it was a pretty much. I remember it because I'm older, so I do remember that. That was just that was not a good day.
What was it? 98, 81?
77.
Yeah, so I would have been like 4.
I wasn't born yet.
Yeah, and then I was. I remember being in high school when they announced that John Lennon had been shot.
Wow.
Yeah, sitting in homeroom, and everybody was like, the girls were crying and stuff. It was
really that big.
Like, seriously, man. Like they're like breaking down around me, and I'm just like, "What's the big deal?" And then they told me, and I was like I couldn't do anything. I was just so shocked. I was just because the way he died.
Well, it's funny how when we all went to school, those moments did come up where they'd say it over like the PA system or.
Yeah.
You'd actually watch things on the TV. Remember that they'd roll into the class?
Yep.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I'm that old.
These kids would never know now.
Nope, they would not.
They just check their social media feed.
Exactly. Their pocket buzzes and they're being told something.
Mark, what's a useless talent you have?
Ooh, that's a good question. I can do the worm. I used to break dance when I was
sick, dude.
That's not useless, Mark.
Yeah, that's not.
Yeah, that's something to pull out of the wedding.
If I was only on TikTok, I could monetize that.
Oh, there you go. You can do something with James.
Yeah,
two of you.
I used to break dance a little bit when I was 12, 13. I probably had 3 or 4 moves. So I was never really that great. But I had a good worm.
I had zero moves.
You can do the worm, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, he can. Plays the bass and does the worm and sings.
One of these days I'll bust it out at Mecca of Stank show, but
we're gonna have to go to one of your shows.
Absolutely,
by the way.
we are.
Yeah, you let us. We'll stay in touch, Mark, and then we can figure it out.
Oh, great.
Well, if you're live on Elgin Street, I live down the street, so I'm quite happy to walk up there and watch a show.
Nice.
Yeah.
Dog, what do you got for him?
That's a good question. I like this question. If there's one thing you could change about the music industry, what would it be?
Wow, interesting. Well, I think if I was a full-time musician, I would change the way it's monetized right now because it's kind of not really monetized.
Right.
It's really artists are making money playing live and traveling and playing shows but no one's making money on Spotify and
No.
and so it's pros and cons of your music gets out there to millions of people, but you're not getting paid for it.
Right.
So that's one of the things. And I think it's the age-old question of balancing. How do you commercialize something and monetize it and still keep it pure and still keep it without it turning into a soundbite for an Alpha-Getty commercial.
Yeah.
Or Smurfaghetty.
Smurfaghetty, baby.
Right.
Yeah, Smurfaghetty.
It's funny that you mentioned that, and that kind of goes into my question that I'm going to say, like social media with music. Like it's sort of like TikTok. Sometimes music is discovered there as opposed.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to learn that now. It's so it's only been the last, I guess, 3 weeks now since we've had our first original song out, and I'm learning ways how to promote it.
Mm-hmm.
And the way, apparently is one of the methods is, you promote it to influencers on Instagram and TikTok. And, they'll share a 10-second clip, doing, shuffle dance or who knows, standing on their head or whatever it is, changing outfits. But your song is playing.
Yep.
So, it kind of goes to show you, the attention span of of the audience nowadays is, they'll hear 10 seconds of your song while someone's doing a handstand, and, it's still a bit different, right? And so, I'm not sure what that means. Does it really drive the music, or does it just drive clicks for the video? Who knows, right?
Well, it does a bit of both, I think. But I think that you kind of strike a good chord there, where it's like, the three of us could sit down and I could put on a vinyl and I could listen to it and then flip it and listen to the rest of it. Whereas I think that the younger generation now are so, it's all about instant gratification from these things that they don't hear the whole song. And it's tough because, obviously I've been sitting there. It goes into your next tune that I've been listening to, which is When We Left Earth, which will be out on July 15th.
Yeah, that's great.
So I made some notes on that, but it's like, it's so bluesy and soulful that I can feel the blues in that track. I just felt it. I don't know if that was what your goal was, but certainly
I'm not sure if I had a genre when I was writing it, but I had a vibe. I had this mental image of and I'm kind of a nerd. I'm kind of a science nerd, and I watch a lot of science communicators on YouTube and things. And so I wrote this from the perspective of literally probably more literal than expected. I've literally just this vision of humans leaving Earth at one point because it's on fire or something, right?
Yeah.
And bittersweet, kind of feelings, maybe especially with that. But then I thought, that's pretty nerdy, so I want to make it kind of enough of a metaphor so it could be, maybe it's not really about leaving Earth. Maybe it's a metaphor for for something else, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to leave it a little bit open for interpretation. But when it comes down to it, it's nerdy as fuck.
Yeah. And there you have it.
Although a very funky tune.
Yeah.
I was all over it.
Yeah, nerdy as fuck, but with a funky bass.
Yeah.
Or
you're in the right room, Mark.
Yeah. You're okay here, man. Yeah, for sure. That was.
I'm certainly the coolest guy in the room, but
And I had this idea of
crickets.
If you're familiar with Voyager and Carl Sagan's Pale Blue Dot.
I kind of referenced it a little bit. I wasn't that much
about it. So once Voyager was done its mission and was leaving the solar system, Carl Sagan convinced NASA to turn it around back to Earth and take a one shot of you see Earth and this little blue speck in this suspended in this beam of sunlight, and all you see this one little blue dot. And Carl Sagan had a whole he wrote a book called Pale Blue Dot, and there's a monologue in there which basically talks about everyone you've ever known, everyone you've ever loved, is on that dot. Mm-hmm. So I used some of those lyrics, and I kind of sang them through a vocoder in the song. And so that's Carl Sagan's writing, and you hear that in that song.
Yeah,
cool.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, it is.
Why don't we listen to Dopamine Dreams?
Yeah, let's do that.
Ain't nobody wanna say love is all digress. Your information bubble just popped. Now you're standing there, pants down, watching the clock. Well, you can't convince me that the earth is flat, when my vision of this is your revision of that. I digress. Your information bubble just popped. Now you're standing there, pants down, watching the clock.
Go ahead there, James. I know you've got some great stuff to talk about this song that
it
Mark's done for us.
I've listened to it multiple times, and I just I was blown away with like my mental picture of the song. Like I kind of have a visual, again, of like a space oddity sort of thing. You know, is that like explain that tune to me just a little bit?
So, I mean, I've got a bit of, there's two things I think that really kind of impacted the writing of that song. So one of them was in 2016, I was talking to a friend, so this is maybe a week before the election in the U.S., and I had just finished watching this Mike Lemore series on Netflix called, I think, Trumpland or something like that.
Okay.
Where he's doing a college tour of basically trying to, talk to people about, Trump can probably win, and we have to kind of, really talk to these voters in this kind of, underserved kind of class, apolitical class, and, so obviously he was advocating voting against Trump,
right,
and he's a liberal.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember talking to a friend a few days later, educated, and she said, hey, Mike Lemore is voting for Trump. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, yeah, he's voting for Trump, and I said, that makes no sense, So I didn't argue with her. That's what she believed. And I came to realize that she probably saw it pop up, as fake news in her feed.
Yes.
And she just took it as that's the truth,
Mm-hmm.
And maybe, other people might be a little more discerning of what they see on their Facebook news feed. And so, I maybe realized that, okay, well, if this educated person is all of a sudden just believing this non-truth, what else is out there that people are believing, right?
Exactly.
Flat Earths, whatever.
Yeah.
And so the other thing was I went to on a hike in BC Yoho National Park, a place called Lake O'Hare, in I want to say maybe a year before COVID or so. I've lost track of time with COVID, but let's just say the last few years. And, so I was completely off the grid, in the mountains for, in my mind it was a week, but I think it was 3 days. My wife keeps on reminding me that, you were off social media and internet for 3 days.
Okay.
And so, but even like the first day, I remember, being a little anxious and being, all of a sudden I'm not getting this constant feed of information. I mean, I'm kind of an information junkie, right? So,
well, most of us are now.
Scrolling through Twitter, scrolling through Facebook, whatever it is. Mindless scrolling. Some things are useful, but 90% of it was noise for me, right? But, what else are you going to do, right?
Right.
And so I remember the second day, all of a sudden my brain started to revert back to how it used to operate, pre-Matrix, right? So going back maybe, early 2000s and, where I wasn't carrying my internet all around. And all of a sudden I realized that, like, a lot of these things affect my mood, a lot of, so I came back home and I said, you know what, I'm going to delete Facebook. I don't need it. And it seemed more dramatic at the time. And a lot of people were, they just get expressed kind of, oh, okay, that's good for you. But, I can't do that. I've got family on there. Everyone has their own kind of, that's why I just post picture of my kids, right?
Right.
Everyone has their reasons, and that's fine. So I made a point, because of misinformation and because of just getting my brain hacked all the time. I just decided I didn't need it anymore. And, I'm still on Instagram, and Instagram, I follow people because of their content, not because I know them.
Yes.
In Facebook, I get content that I don't want to see because I know the people, right? People's rants about politics, people's, anger, and who knows, I wasn't on during COVID, so who knows what kind of COVID anger was posted by people.
Well, that's a sore point with a lot of people, the whole COVID thing, right?
Yeah,
I have a very personal attachment to it. So, and I don't anyway, I'm like you, but I can't get myself off for some reason of the Facebook. But I have a question about that song. Yeah. And how did you guys hook up with Rebecca Noel? Because I'm listening to her album. It's phenomenal. Yeah. I really like that one.
album. She's great. She's great. Yeah. So, our producer, recording engineer, Jason Jack Nunes, has been collaborating with Rebecca for probably a good decade now.
Nice.
And he's recorded many albums in town. He's one of the top guys in town. So, he recorded some Commotions. I think one of the Commotions albums, some soul jazz orchestra albums. I think he did a Colin James one.
Nice.
His resume is endless. And so he did some outreach with our band. He just heard through the grapevine that, you got to check out this band, and people are talking about him. And, apparently he doesn't do a lot of outreach, but he reached out to Jansen because Jansen had done some work with him in the past. He said, what's this Mecca of Stank, And so we set up, I met him up for a beer, and I just talked about music for an hour, and I didn't even know who he was until after that. I just assumed he was kind of some guy that had Pro Tools in his basement, right?
Gotcha.
And so we were so on the same page of musically, if we're just on everything. We have the same brain, and so it became a really kind of a match made in heaven. So we set up to record end of January, or I guess early January maybe. And so, we did 3 songs. And so 2 of them I, wrote in the last, probably once Jason kind of outreached, I wanted to get as many songs written so we can record as many as possible, a little more efficient, you lay all the drum tracks down at the same time. And,
okay.
And so I wrote probably State in Your Mind maybe a month before I met Jason. But then When We Left Earth was probably, a few weeks leading up to recording. And we hadn't even played it live and recorded it. And so Jason, he was really hearing a female vocal on that track, and I agreed. It's kind of R&B, kind of female vibe. And so I asked him. I said, not thinking that it would work out. I said, maybe you can ask Becky. And that's Rebecca's name.
Okay.
People, just call her Becky once they're friends with her.
Right.
And so he asked her, and she really liked the song. So she agreed to sing the track, and so
amazing.
Yeah,
it's
a great collaboration.
It is, and I just loved her voice. So I'm like, okay, who is this? Okay, and so I'm going to go off, and that's the good thing about Spotify, right? It's like you can just go off, and one of the good things. I mean, there's not a lot of good things, but
Spotify is great for that stuff.
Yeah, for just to go off and in a second have this album in front of me so I can listen to it.
Yeah, and she has a great soul album,
Yep.
Solstice, that Jason, our producer, actually played bass on and recorded.
Nice.
And so, but she was also a semi-finalist in the Quebec Voice, right?
Really?
So, is it La Voix?
Yep. That would be it.
So, she was a little bit, kind of still is a celebrity in town, because of that.
On the Quebec side for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
go ahead.
a more important question, really.
This is definitely important.
80s or 90s? And tell me why.
Okay, I'll tell you why. So I spent,
I'm not going to like
I
this
set
answer,
this
right?
one up. Well,
Yeah, you
you'll
sure
love
did.
it. You're going to love it.
Oh, am I?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so I lived in the U.S., in Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C. area, for 8 years, from 2000 to 2008. 5 of those years, I was in an 80s tribute called Members Only. I don't know if you remember the Members Only jackets.
Yes. Yeah.
So we played, every weekend, in bars, in our costumes, and we all had our characters. I was Tino, the Latin. I'm not Latin, but I was the Latin heartthrob, the aging Latin heartthrob that got kicked out of Menudo when his testicles dropped.
Nice.
Amazing.
Yeah, so
That's a sad day for Menudo.
yeah, they just recycle another 14-year-old in there.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was, we played every 80s pop, hair band, synth, you name it, we played it. I'd be hard pressed to find an 80s song that you can mention that we didn't play, and maybe that's a good.
He's pretty good at that.
Yeah. So I really, and at the time, I think I would still listen to 80s for fun. I wasn't just playing them. And it started out as learning, what songs can we learn, and so what's this Howard Jones track, or what's this Nick Kershaw, whatever. Yep. And then eventually, after 5 years of playing a lot of shows and ending every show with Love Shack.
Love Shack.
Can't do it anymore. I'm done with Love Shack. And most 80s music, it just brings you back to kind of I OD'd on it.
Yeah.
So 90s, I think things changed a lot musically, and it was less synth pop, less and obviously not every 80s genre, or I should say not every 80s music at the time was pop. Pop synth, and there was a lot of diverse music in the 80s, right?
Yes, yeah.
But it's the stuff that made it to my ears in Moncton, New Brunswick. And as a kid, was In Excess was one of my favorites actually. Mm-hmm. I got really into Midnight Oil.
Midnight Oil was great. Peter Garrett, yeah.
Yeah. Senator Garrett, former Senator Garrett.
Yep, yeah, he was in Australia.
Yeah, so and that kind of late 80s, there's some stuff, a lot of Canadian stuff was getting into the time too,
it was
Grapes of Wrath and
so much good stuff.
I think the Hips' first album's in the 80s, right?
Yeah,
it was close to
yeah.
What about you ever heard of the Arrows, Canadian band?
Nope.
Yeah, they had a couple hits in the 80s.
Oh, really?
That I really like.
So basically, what you're saying, Mark, is the 90s is the better.
So 90s.
That's what I'm hearing.
Better decade.
So 90s brought neo soul, right? It brought hip hop. It brought and not only hip hop. It took hip hop from mixtapes in the early 80s from Grandmaster Flash.
Yep.
To mainstream, if I can say white America, right? In terms of in the suburbs, right?
Yes,
for sure.
And all of a sudden, acts like Boyz II Men, 90% of the audience was white, right?
Yeah.
Which is a whole, kind of achievement in terms of crossing.
Absolutely is
crossing genres, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so you win this round.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
When do you think you'll have a full album? Do you think you'll be able to work on that over the summer?
So right now we're releasing a single every 6 weeks. So we're going to start recording 2 more at the end of this month. So that'll bring us up to 5. And then that'll bring us probably to a single every 6 weeks till the end of the year, and then we'll have enough. I think the goal is to have a full set of originals to play at the festivals.
Nice.
If we we're going to start applying to some festivals next summer, and so hopefully I should say in the fall for next summer, and so hopefully if it works out, we'll have a full set of originals. But I'd still like to keep a few of the interpretive covers.
Yes, absolutely, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's Dawg and I have been talking about it all week. How amazing the tunes that you did send us, and we really enjoyed them. What's next for you guys? Like, you're just going to release album, like the next tracks over the next 6 weeks, and then 12 weeks after that.
So the summer is going to be we're playing gigs, quite often, and so playing gigs and doing some recording, and I think next summer, if things work out our way, we'll have. We're going to put some vinyl out. Once we have enough tracks, put out some vinyl.
Yes, let's do that.
Yeah, we're all down.
I would do
we're
it right
down.
now if maybe a 10-inch now or 7-inch,
Yeah.
you know. But I think it's like a 10-month waiting list for a lot of vinyl pressing right now.
Yeah, it's come back so far hard and fast, right? That everybody's doing it now. So
Yeah.
I would much prefer to listen to your guys' stuff on vinyl.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, again, Mark, we can't thank you enough for being here.
Seriously,
Appreciate you guys, and I
we-
really appreciate being the first guest on here. You know, this is a great podcast.
Thanks, man. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you very
Yeah,
much,
we're growing every week, and
Yeah.
feeling a bit more comfortable. But yeah, like honestly, man, this was a great conversation, and appreciate you being here.
And high praise from a musician. Like we're just music lovers. We're not like I don't know how to play.
Yeah,
anything.
but without you guys, there's no one to
Spoons.
listen to the music. Right?
That's true.
You know,
You
so-
know, you got that point. Yeah,
Well done.
Mark's a smart man,
He's very smart.
except for the '90s thing. He's a very smart man.
Yeah, whatever.
Teasing.
Yeah. Well, anyways, Mark, Leo of Mecca of Stank. New songs are coming out. One's coming out on June 3rd, then July 15th, and then 6 weeks after that, and 6 weeks after that. So stay tuned on Spotify and check out that playlist.
Yeah, and check them out on Instagram too, and follow them.
Yeah,
Give 'em
we're
some-
gonna tag them all week. We're
Yeah,
gonna
give them
show
some love, guys.
Yeah.
All right, till next time.
Take care. Have a good week.